Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Faz.
And my name is Rich.
And I'm
Sorry,
scared.
I didn't mean to make such intense eye contact after that.
I liked it. I'm on holiday. I'm speaking to you
You're
from
officially not
beyond the grave, beyond the M42. Is that hot? It might be a motorway. Who knows? I'm away this week. So, but hey, look, by the magic of the internet,
It's clever, isn't it?
yeah,
It's clever.
We have pre-recorded this episode, so in a stinking July rainstorm. So hopefully, where I am now in the future. Present, it's warm, and I'm a millionaire.
We can only hope.
Both of those things have happened. We are doing a brief pod this week, as we do with our holiday weeks. We decided it would be a good time to talk about about Evercade. I said the Evercade in general.
Yeah, Evercade plural.
Yeah, because Evercade are having a bit of a facelift, or they have done in the last month or so. So, you were an early adopter of Evercade, were you?
Not so much Evercade as a whole. I have been intrigued by it for a long time. I mean, for anybody who is
I was just about to say that isn't before we crack on with what's going on. So Evercade then, Blaze Entertainment, isn't it? And and what is an Evercade and what are the variants and things?
Yeah, so it's basically the idea is you have originally it was a handheld system, and they have cartridges that are compilations. Mm-hmm. Various publishing houses, developers, etc., and then over time they've added a home console, they've added a different handheld, and then they've gone through and added a different handheld again that is the same handheld but slightly different, and various configurations, and then they're doing that bar top arcade one as well. And the same people are also responsible for the hyper mega tech like pocket things, which have various games pre-built on them, but also can play Evercade cartridges.
Yes.
So to actually answer your original question,
hey, you answered that really well. Like, as in, if it had been me, I'd have been like, it's a game thing with the Bobby, and you press the buttons and the missiles fire and everyone's happy.
I wouldn't worry about it. They're listening on the internet, and Google is on the internet too.
That's true, yes. So do your own work, motherfuckers.
It all comes out of the wash today. It's fine. If you want reputable sources of information, you know where to look, and it's not here.
Yeah.
So
why are you still looking for it, idiots?
I was always intrigued by the Evercade and the idea of having this thing that was like a new console that's putting out retro compilations. I deliberately waited because I wanted to check that it wasn't just like a flash in the pan. We've got 3 cartridges and now there is no interest in doing any more, and it will just die a quiet death. So I waited until they brought out the Evercade EXP, and then it was almost like they had sort of laser focused that on me as well, because that was in line with when they started bringing out arcade compilations, and it has that tate mode on it, so you can play things in a vertical orientation, which is great for shooters. And
Al tate.
Indeed. So I dove in, and I really enjoy it. I really like it. I think it's a sound little device. And
How long have you had it for?
Oh, good question. When did it come out? Probably a year to 18 months ago. I think I would have picked mine up. I don't think it's 2 years, but it could be 2 years. God, okay. Could it be 2 years? It might be. Jeez.
You sounded like you're on stage there. Could it be 2 years?
Has it really been that long?
So wistful.
No, just having a quiet moment, because basically it kind of I ended up getting it because I got some vouchers from work for some nice work I did.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit of a treat, and then I've just had that moment of like, God, was that the last time I did anything of note?
Yeah, was that last time I did good work?
But that's fine. I can check that.
Still employed. It's fine.
Yeah,
don't worry,
exactly. I haven't actively done anything
You've
bad.
been doing, ambivalent work. Like, is it
Important background work? There we go. Right, got it. So yeah, like had it for a little while. Basically, it is the short version, and had various cartridges come and go, and seen like CEX and how their pricing has gone for some of them, considering the whole point to start with was they were affordable cartridges.
Yeah,
so that's 15 to 20 quid.
Let's dwell on that point a little bit then.
Yeah, so like over time, where they've wanted to release more ambitious collections of stuff or get other publishing houses involved, they've tweaked the pricing a little bit as they've gone. So now you have some that are a little bit more expensive, but you can get like the original Tomb Raider trilogy and stuff like that.
So that now, yeah. So that this is a weird thing to say because as we are recording, that is not out yet. But when we send this podcast out, it will be out.
In theory.
In theory, yeah, exactly. So meant to be the end of July, start of August. So the EXP-R, I believe it is, the variant of the handheld one, that is going to be £100 and you get the Tomb Raider cartridge with that. So Tomb Raider 1, 2 and 3. Not the remastered versions that have just recently come out, just I don't want to say bog standard, but the
original.
Yeah, the mid 90s originals. And that, I think the difference being that it's pretty much the exact same as the EXP, but it doesn't have a HDMI port that you can put out to a screen.
And it looks like something from Tron.
Yeah, it does. It's blue and black, isn't it? Yeah. So
I quite like how it looks personally.
Yeah, it is quite nice, isn't it? I do like the white and red one. So as I always copy you, as recently as you have a Vita, I bought a Vita. That is in you have an Evercade. I bought an Evercade EXP as well. That is in, but I've not really used mine yet, and I've only got 2 cartridges for it. But we'll come back to that. Yep. We will talk about pricing. So that's £99 for the Evercade, and then you get the 1 cartridge with it. The prices seem to be new. Between is it usually £15 and £25 by the looks of things for a new release cartridge? Generally,
so 15 is where they were pitched when they first came out.
Yeah.
And then over time, they've had some that have been nearer like 17, 18 quid. And then the Tomb Raider one, I think, is the first of a batch that's going to be nearer 20-something.
Okay.
Because of the size of the games involved and it needs slightly different stuff inside the cartridge.
Which is still cool that it is still a hard cartridge.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It looks awesome.
Yeah, and I think that coupled with because I think when I got my EXP, it was maybe about 130 or something like that. So you've got a 30 quid drop in the price.
Yeah.
And then you factor in the fact that you've got this 20 quid cartridge. And I think when you look at it like that, I know some people have been saying about, the price of the hardware and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's quite reasonable if you've not taken the plunge yet.
Yeah. So if you get an Evercade new EXP, and I only know this because I was looking into this recently myself. So I picked up a mint condition one for £80, which had the Capcom 18 games built into it, and an IREM. Is it IREM? Do you say IREM? IREM cartridge with it as well, which I think is 12 games, or maybe less than that, maybe 8. But then you get those, and I got that for £80, and that was basically mint condition. So, and I saw that as a bargain because it was like, all right, well that's £50 cheaper than a new one, and it's still £130, and they're not discontinuing that option for people either, because they're going to have the £100 one with the Tomb Raider, which has doesn't have the HDMI out port, and they're going to keep the £130 one as well. But it feels like they might get rid of that. But I don't. But it feels like 2 solutions. Of a similar sort of thing, and so if they can produce them, that's and sell them, that's great. But
it's great, but that kind of speaks to what I have come across as what I would argue is the biggest criticism of how Blaze have kind of approached it, and it's they seem more intent on churning out hardware rather than cartridges.
Okay.
So you've got another handheld, you've got another home console, they've got more Super Pockets coming out, they've got the bar top arcade ones, 2 versions of, and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got quite a few people sitting there going, well, hang on, like we've already invested in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
Where's my games? I want more games. I want to be able to actually play these things. You're repackaging your Capcom collection that was on the EXP, and it's going to be on this one instead. And why do I need to invest in more hardware to play the same thing when? Yeah. So I think there are some legitimate concerns that perhaps they're starting to spread everything a little bit thin. That said, personally, it's great to see the Tomb Raider stuff come in. I was really pleased to see that they're doing another Toaplan one. I know plenty of people when the EXP came out were sick to the back teeth of shooters, but I was really pleased to see that there's another Toaplan one coming. Really pleased to see that Batsu Gun's on it. It's a personal favourite of mine. And so being able to play that on a handheld that has kind of weirdly become my go-to if I'm going to go on a train journey and stuff like that. That's really exciting. I'm really pleased about that. So yeah, I hope they continue to put bits and bobs out. I would quite like to see more cartridges, but that's me. I would like to see a few more sort of big name publishers getting on. A Konami cartridge comes to mind pretty flipping quickly. Ones like Sega and stuff like that have reissued games quite a lot. Evercade feels like an opportunity for people like Konami to not really have to think about it too much. They can almost just go, well, you guys sort it out. We'll just sit here and sleep on our bed of money. So fill your boots. And so, yeah, I would like to see them do that. And if Tomb Raider and all the extra hardware means that they can make that happen down the line, then yeah, sure.
So I have a couple of questions then around cartridge cost in terms of things that are out of print, effectively.
Yeah.
Or out of, what do you print a cartridge? I don't know.
I'm not sure what we call. I think they might call it out of print.
So there's how many cartridges do you have? You've got quite a sizable amount, haven't you? Comparative to mine, none. I've got the starter pack, if you will.
Not as many as I had once upon a time. Yeah. I've got rid of a few for reasons that we will come on to. But 10 plus, I think, 10 to 15 mark, I think.
And you've got some quite sought after ones in there, like Oliver Twins, is it?
Oliver Twins, I've got the Technos collection as well.
And they're like, you could sell those for about 70, 80 quid a go at the moment.
I think I saw CEX as the resale value of the Technos one was about £90. So they would probably give you about 60 for it. Yeah, it's nuts. Especially as you look at the games that are on it, and you can pick up quite a few of them, say on a Switch or something like that. But then you can also see why they would want to then reissue it as a Super Pocket where the games are built in, and so you buy that piece of hardware again. But again, plenty of people have turned around and said, but why aren't you reissuing the cartridge and doing like a second run of that cartridge then? And I'm not sure why. I wonder if it's because people saw what they did with Capcom and putting the games on the hardware, and they went, well, can we have that as well then? Why aren't we doing that? I'm not sure who initiated that, whether or not that was Blaze or the publishers, etc. But either way, you look at it and you go, well, actually, having 50 odd, I think it was 50 games are on the Atari one or something ridiculous, and I don't need to have more cartridges, but it's a nice, neat little handheld device that also happens to be able to play Evercade cartridges. It's weirdly tempting again, which makes zero sense because I have an Evercade handheld. I don't need another Evercade handheld, and yet here I am going, oh well, actually, catch me on my day, and I probably could convince myself to buy that. It's ridiculous.
This is, and I guess that so leading on from the questions about the cartridges and things, then, and this is coming from now an owner of an Evercade EXP that is in. So the Konami collection, I think that is a point that you made there. That I'm sure you can get that on like the Xbox store, for example, for like £2. Like, so what makes these cartridges sought after, so people want to pay for them, and what makes it that you would want an Evercade over, say, nowadays it's very easy to go on the internet and find a random handheld that's got 1,000 games and whatever, you know. And why would people not do that instead, rather than faffing around with the cartridge and stuff? Do you feel like there's a divide between proper retro gaming and people that should be, and the method you should be doing, or hacking and or getting a hacked console or something like that, or getting something that's, you know, from a random company in, you know, Far East Asia or whatever? Yeah.
So for me personally, and I appreciate this is not for everybody, and it's not going to be how
it's your
everybody wants
podcast.
to
You can say
approach
what
it.
the fuck you want.
Well, this is true. Something like, say, I mean, for argument's sake, let's say, okay, well, we're dancing around a hypothetical Konami collection, right?
Yeah.
So let's take that. So let's say they put a load of the classic Castlevania games on a collection, and you have a Konami 1, and a load of Contra games, and you have a Konami 2. For argument's sake, let's say that. Both of those collections, yeah, you're absolutely right. You can get them on the Switch for a couple of quid in a sale, right? Both of those collections would be made by M2. They're really high quality, you know, emulated copies of the games. M2 do a lot of really, really good work around it as well. There's a load of digital extra stuff on there, like artwork and manuals and all that kind of stuff. The Evercade cartridges have none of that. Like it's the original kind of ROM, just running a bit nicer, and all that kind of stuff. So potentially the quality of the conversion wouldn't be as good as someone like M2, arguably. From what I've seen so far of the Evercade stuff, no problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
Works absolutely fine. But nonetheless, M2 do such good work. It's always going to be a risk. Evercade also do their own manuals, so you're going to get a very truncated, slimmed down version of that when it comes to the information for playing the games. And some of the games that are on some of the Evercade cartridges, like the strategy games, you don't have much space in those manuals for things to work with. So, you know, potentially you might not learn much about how to play it. That said, you have a kind of that, you know, the box is numbered. You know, it is Konami 1, Konami 2. People want to collect those things. People want to go for the complete set. You know, it's a modern system. It doesn't go back that far. Sure, there are ones that are out of print, but there aren't that many of them. You can still, if you want to go for a complete set, you can, and keep pace with it. For me personally, to actually get to your point about why bother, it boils down to who gets paid. I want to know that the money I've spent on it is at least vaguely going to, if not to the person who made it, then whoever is holding the license at the moment, whoever legally has the right to it. If I'm just downloading ROMs off of some website, sure, like there is nothing stopping you going doing that. But ultimately, someone's worked on that. Someone deserves to be paid for that. And were it me, were the shoe on the other foot, I would want to be paid for my hard work. You know, it's if somebody's done it as a hobby and they put it out for free or whatever, fair cop. If they've managed to get to the stage that they want to ask you for a couple of quid for it, sure, like fill your boots. But ultimately, when it comes to retro games, like because of how we did go through that period where it was difficult to get reissued versions of games, and you would have to play on original hardware and all that. I don't want to go back to that. So I want to make sure, like, I don't have much say in this world, you know, with much besides being able to vote and being able to use my wallet. And I can use my wallet to put a mark somewhere and go, no, like, let's do it this way. I want to get behind this way of doing it. And if they see more people are willing to spend money on retro games rather than just downloading them for free, then my theory goes that the people who have the licenses, like your Konamis, would then turn around and go, well, actually, we want a piece of that pie, so maybe it is worth us putting out some of these games. And I mean, they're, reissuing Rocket Knight or something like that, aren't they? So, you know, maybe there is something to that. You know, it's big money, retro games. So I'd like to think that perhaps we're nudging the dial.
It's a noble investment. Really,
Yeah,
almost
like
in a way that is. I'm not trying to but
no,
how it feels.
I'm under no illusion that it is slightly up myself and a bit pompous and all that kind of
No,
stuff. And not
it's not.
everybody's in the same position that they are able to do that.
Yeah,
Obviously, they're not. But ultimately, I am.
hmm
And if that is how I can, use my power, I guess, what little economic power I wield, then I will absolutely and happily die on that hill.
yeah. I mean, it is just interesting because it's like, I guess that from my point of view, that how I see it now, that so I've picked up an Evercade and it's a lovely piece of kit. That is in so compared to the Ambernick we've referred to on the podcast previously that I picked up during lockdown, where that comes with probably like 3,000 ROMs on there. The actual the hardware itself, that is in, this is made by a loving, caring business who have made it, their business to, like make sure the retro gaming is done correctly, and it feels great, and it's so much better to hold. That is in. So immediately I'm like, I'd rather, like I feel like my Ambernick, I'm like, just because it's got so many ROMs on there, I'm a bit like, I don't want to put it in the bin, but it feels like a piece of trash compared to this, almost in a way. That is in. So that's a good point. But at the same time, also, it's probably quite hard for me to crack into, especially with, I can't afford to go and buy a Technos cartridge at the price that it is now. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure that, as much as you're saying that you like to invest in the kind of things, you maybe wouldn't pay £90 for that now, comparative to what you paid at the time.
That is ridiculous, though. I really hope that's an outlier.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to be necessary. There's a few of them going up, and like, is in. So, for example, when I bought the Evercade off the chap that I bought it off on Facebook, like, is in. So he seemed like a really knowledgeable, nice guy, and he was like, "Oh, I've got these 3 other cartridges that they're out of print now. They are, if you look on eBay, and he was like, he was like, go away for a couple of days, have a look, research it. He's like, these are going for £35-40 usually, but and postage. He's like, if you want them, I'll give you them all for £30 each. And I was like, oh. But then I was a bit like, I've got plenty of games to play already. Yeah. And that's when it corrected in my head. I was like, I've kind of already probably got all those games on a ROM somewhere, which isn't necessarily the right way to think about it. But I was almost like, I don't want to have to pay more money to have that. But, for example, I would like to pay for Duke Nukem for £15-16. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in to have a few games and stuff. So I think it just needs to be the right value for me personally. And again, like you say, just I guess probably where you are economically and stuff, like has been, but like, oh, kids, you can't have an ice pop this week because daddy got Technos.
But it's a very good point, though. It is a very good point, and it's very easy for me to say all this because, case in point, when I bought my Technos cartridge, I got it for £15. And it does feel like long term. The Evercade thing is going to almost become this. You're going to have to consciously decide to skip stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like a book series or a magazine or something like. Occasionally you might miss an issue or something like that. It almost feels like that kind of thing. And then you add in where they're like the kind of changes they're doing to the operating systems on the devices and stuff like that, and where you can see the catalog and things like that, and you look at that and you start to wonder, like, are we going to get to the stage that we're going to do digital distribution instead, or what have you? So like, I do feel like the whole thing is going to shift somewhere eventually. But yeah,
I'm shocked it hasn't already, if I'm going to be honest.
Well,
it looks like the interface is there to be used, and
it is now, but that's a reasonably recent thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like we kind of talk about these things all the time, and people might get sick of it and think, oh, you guys have spoke about this before or whatever. Or you might be dancing around the subject and you might not land on a certain side of the fence about how you feel about things and stuff. Like, as in, I don't want to be like, I don't think there's any right answer to how you game and how you retro game and things, because everybody's different is what I guess I'm trying to drive at. And we're both different in how we access our games as well. But I think probably at the heart of it is almost, and I don't want to definitely speak for us both here, but that having access to all the video games for us to be able to, I guess not pay homage. That's me sounding fucking up myself. There. Do you know what I mean? That is it. But just to have access to them in some form of someone's artwork that they have produced at some point, and for you to enjoy that is what is at the heart of why we do this podcast and how we do it together, how we interact together. You know, and I don't think there has to be necessarily a clear answer on it. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I think the more options you have available, the better. Because ultimately, it is about making it so that these things can see the light of day. If it means that, somebody hasn't actually deigned to reissue this or make it available on digital storefronts, right? Like, we'll pop the ROM up, off you go. And it almost feels like, you know, could you get to the stage that companies forfeit the right, to charge you for some of these things, or what? I mean, what? Let's think. Sega Rally. There we go. That's a good example. You know, if I would happily slam money down to play, a nice, clean HD remaster of the original Sega Rally, and all that kind of stuff, and yet one is not forthcoming.
Yeah.
So, like,
Daytona for me, like, isn't that? I find it's really hard to be able to play. You've got it on Saturn, but apart from that, it's like
exactly
that you can. I think you can kind of get it weirdly through the PS3 store, sort of, or you're meant to be able to, but it's just like, you know. And if Evercade then said, "Oh, we're going to do a rally cartridge with those two games on," me and you'd be like, "Ding, ding, ding, ding."
Off you go, take my money. Yes, absolutely. But until that happens, you're kind of left with the ROM, unless you are fortunate enough to be able to procure a Saturn, and all that kind of stuff. So if you know, I can easily see how you end up going down a certain route with these things.
I can't help. There's a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I think that I'm concerned that the Evercade market is kind of a bubble, like almost that there is a popability to it. That is in so because of the fact that you've got all these external circumstances, and I know I'm speaking out two sides of my mouth here because I've got ROMs on my PSP and my Vita and an Ambernick and things because of them existing. So it's almost like have they got a big enough market of people? And then that kind of fed into a little bit of me getting an Evercade, and also that I'm going to get some cartridges for it because I feel like you say, almost like, you know, you should invest some money in these kind of things to make them exist because they're a good thing for retro gaming. But I'm also a bit scared that, you know, I could see a world, and almost like with the fear around them just releasing loads of handhelds and hardware even, and it's almost like you say, I'd rather they're investing in more software. I don't know how you feel about that.
I think.
What do you see the future being like for it?
I think that's completely valid, and because that's exactly the same reason why I didn't buy the original version of the handheld.
Yeah.
You know, I waited for that exact reason, to, you know, see how it panned out and make sure that it didn't just fizzle away. I think releasing more hardware is a bold move, but I can kind of see why they've done it. Because if it means that you can get more things that can play Evercade cartridges into the hands of players, they are more likely to buy more cartridges.
Yeah.
And, you know, you might have someone who, you know, used to play loads of Atari, hasn't played games in decades, and then there you go, 50 quid, handheld, you can play your 50 Atari things, got you out for your birthday, really enjoyed it. Oh, I can play Evercade cartridges as well. Okay, cool, let's give it a go. And I can see the logic, but at the same time, you kind of don't want to cut your nose off to spite your face, do you? So I think it's going to be a bit of a delicate balance, because I do think there is a point where you can release too much hardware for the same thing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the next sort of year or so pans out. I think I would like the next round of hardware revisions that they're doing at the moment with like the EXP-R and the home console. I can't remember what it's called. I hope they will be the last ones for a little while, besides the kind of bar top thing, which feels a bit more like a novelty, if I'm being honest. A novelty that I was very tempted by.
No, it looks really
but
cool.
A novelty. Nonetheless.
Is it VS? The
home
console, is it VSR?
Yes, that's it. So yeah, I think they're onto a good thing with it.
Okay.
I just think it needs a little bit of because you only ever see the kind of roadmap a year or so or at the start of the year for the next year, it's kind of difficult to get much of a sense of where they're going with it, and I do wonder where they're going with it. So
I felt like I needed to ask that question because I felt like I needed you being as well read as you are and everything to I guess reassure me. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like before I invest a little bit more, and because I do want to pick up, I think that probably the next gaming purchase I make will be an Evercade cartridge or two, and it's a bit like I don't want to get to the point where I'm like starting to buy a few of these, and then it goes, oh, actually, we don't exist anymore. Cheers, and then there's no guarantee of that, obviously, and it's not incumbent. It's not their. Obviously, it's good for them to have jobs and things. It's not their responsibility to make me feel confident about that. But
they're not.
I still want that though.
Yeah, of course you do, because you've invested in it now. Yeah. You've invested in that ecosystem, if you like. And I think say they put out a press release tomorrow saying end of 2024, we're knocking the cartridges on the head. It hasn't worked. We tried, but that's that. For what I currently have in my collection, small though it is, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah.
Yes, I would be disappointed if, say, this hypothetical Konami collection that we keep referring to,
which we're wishing,
which we really want to happen,
wish casting into existence.
If something like that doesn't happen, it will be disappointing, but I will get over it.
Yeah.
The cartridges that I am lucky enough to have in my collection and that I have hung on to, I am very happy with, and I have played quite a lot and will continue to play quite a lot. Mainly because the hardware is so good for taking on a train and stuff like that. Like, I know we've talked about the Switch and stuff like that before, and Steam Deck as well comes to mind pretty quickly, and they're both, great handhelds, but you wouldn't take them on a bus.
Yeah.
The Evercade I would, and I know that I can take a couple of cartridges.
It's so hardy, isn't it? It's really a beautiful piece of kit, and also it feels like you could smack a child across the head and be like, actually, it's going to survive. This is going to survive this altercation. And jail, maybe, but
but like there's
take it to jail. Take it to jail.
There are some great games available on it, and it's given me an opportunity to play some new things as well that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to, that aren't available on modern day digital storefronts and stuff like that. I think even in its state as it is today, I would be happy with it.
Worth the investment. So, did you say you had
I did.
A game review from playing on the Evercade?
Just a little one.
Yeah, no. Gotta have one. Got to have one.
Well, it's a flimsy excuse to talk about a shooter that is that I really, really like. Fireshark.
Okay.
So this is on Toaplan Arcade 2, and it's one of those ones that if you said, "Oh, what are your favourite shooters?" Fireshark is usually floating somewhere near the top for me, and I had that moment of like, why?
Yeah.
Why exactly? Why is that coming to mind so quickly? So I sat down and started playing through it, and then I looked up a couple of bits and bobs, and I realised that actually, it's because it's basically Raiden with biplanes. It's like a steampunky Raiden.
Yeah. Okay.
And there are a couple of really cool little details, like when you're flying over like runways and stuff like that. The people will arrange themselves in a little arrow and stuff like that at the start, and there'll be these little details between levels like that just keep things interesting. And I like the tune and stuff like that. Incidentally, if you want to learn more about like Toaplan stuff, Shmup Junkie did a really, really good video going through all of them. So go do that. It's really, really simple. You've got your three weapons. You've got like a spread shot thing, a green laser, and a flamethrower, which as a biplane just raises all sorts of questions, but there you go.
It doesn't sound like the most efficient way of getting things done.
Oh, it makes zero sense, but I love it. You
couldn't call it Fireshark if you didn't have that.
Well, exactly.
Just wait till you start firing sharks out of the cannon.
It gets pretty hectic. It's really difficult. It's bastard hard. And yeah, there is just something that I really, really enjoy about the way it handles, the way it plays, and the fact that it always feels like in fact, it was Schwamp Junkie's video that highlighted this to me. And I kind of danced around it before. I was like, oh yeah, I've not until I'd heard it articulated like that. And it's the fact that it plays fast enough that you can't really play it on reflex. You do have to memorize it.
Okay.
So like there's no wiggle room for just, pun vaguely intended, flying by the seat of your pants. You do have to learn it and be forced to sit there and learn it. So you do feel like you earn every little bit of progress, and it's never luck. Like you have earned that, and that counts for a lot for me. So the emulation itself is solid. You can play it in Tate mode. It's probably the only time I find the EXP a little bit uncomfortable. Like it's a little bit cramped and a bit cumbersome and awkward to hold. I know you can get like an accessory for it that kind of puts prongs on the side, so that when you're holding it in that vertical orientation, you've got something to grip onto that's a little bit lower down. Which I kind of thought I might invest in, but at the same time, I don't want it to look like a sex toy.
I was just going to say, it feels like, that the bit under a shark, probably a shark's penis, that looks like it's got those prongs on it, and you're a bit like, like emasculated by it, but also a bit like, do I grab that? Did someone grab that? Coming back to the shark situation.
It's an odd one. I don't know why I'm miming it at you.
I don't know.
You've probably got an idea.
I've just asked if you grab a shark's junk, because it feels like you should. So maybe that's what it's more.
Maybe that's it. But yeah, like it's between that the kind of not awkwardness of holding it on its side, but like it isn't quite as comfy as it could be. But nonetheless, you can do it, and it gives you that little bit extra sort of screen to work with, so it's a bit clearer. Also, like the D-pad, I would really like it to have a bit more of a pivot in the middle, so it doesn't feel like I can push the entire D-pad in.
Okay.
That's kind of the only real downsides I've got on the EXP's like build.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it feels nice and solid to play. You can rebind the buttons and stuff like that, which for something like Fireshark is useful because they have like a rapid fire button that the Evercade can do that wasn't in the original game.
Yeah.
So you do need to do some button rebinding if you don't want to be having to constantly tap the fire button. The flip side is that the game wasn't designed for rapid fire, so it does feel like you're cheating a little bit, and it doesn't quite play the same. But it's all there. Ultimately, if I'm sat at home or something like that, I would much rather play M2's version of it when they put it out as part of their shot triggers line. However, I can't really take that with me on a bus. I can't take it with me on a train. If I'm on a train down to London or whatever, it's the first cartridge in my bag. It's Toaplan Arcade 2, so I can play Fireshark, and it's a solid experience that I can take wherever, and that to me like holds real value. It really does. So yeah, I mean it feels kind of like I'm somehow scoring the Evercade and Fireshark at the same time. Cool. But I'm going to give them an 8 quite happily. It's more than solid. Like I turn up, I have a good time with it, and when something like the Batsugun collection comes out, I know I'll get that and have a great time again. So yeah, more power to it.
No, cool. I think it kind of speaks for in my head. Weirdly, that is in my protective switch case, which has gone through holding different things over the last year and a half since we started the podcast. In it, the PSP at one point. Then I've got the DS, the Vita, like different sort of handhelds kicking about. Like the thing that sits in there is my Evercade, because it feels like it's the thing that I feel like it's the nicest bit of even more than the Vita. Like it's almost like the nicest bit of handheld hardware that I actually own. Like it's in, what I mean? Like it's weird.
I totally get that, and it's got a nice sort of
Needs to be treated like a princess.
And yeah, like it's one of those pieces of kit that when I picked it up, because of the fact that I had, been given this stuff through work, it was definitely a treat, right? It was a treat purchase. I had no real need for it. Does anybody ever have a need for video games? But like, it was definitely a treat. However, I've been pleasantly surprised at how much it has become a bit of a workhorse for me. Like, it is definitely a go-to one. If I'm going on a journey that's longer than about an hour, it's going with me.
Yeah.
And I think from the last however many, well, certainly pre-pandemic, like, it's definitely the console that has travelled the most with me.
Okay.
In fact, I took it on holiday with me, earlier in the year and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, it's come with me various places, and I keep the cartridges on a bit of a rotation. And I won't play any of them for very long in any given stretch.
Yeah.
But it's great to just dip into and muck about with something for 20 minutes, half hour, and then move on.
Well, it's nice that we've had this note, really, especially like from your point of view, that you've had a lot of experience with it. You've got a lot of cartridges, and you've had good experience with it. That at this point, it sounds like it's, with new hardware out and about, like, it is a good investment to have an Evercade, and the cartridges kicking about at the moment. So thank you for that, because that kind of like reiterates to me as well that my purchase that I made like about a month ago, I was like, why am like you said, do I need this?
Buying this?
Do I need this? But I had that guttural instinct in me to think, I probably do need this in my house. That is in that, because I feel like I will be using this at some point over the next sort of weeks, months, years and stuff. And it's funny because, so I don't really regularly, when my children are around, because I'm usually, paying attention to them, or not paying attention to them, I just don't want to touch my things. I'm not like gaming like around them and stuff. But occasionally, like, there'll be times where, like, I'll leave a console out and things like that. And it is interesting that, when Oscar first saw that, he seemed probably most intrigued and not, I don't want to say amazed, but he certainly seemed to be a bit more like, oh, that looks really cool compared to, like, my PSP lying around and stuff, which, don't get me wrong, we've spoken about that, and, like, on many occasions, how much of a technical and beautiful machines the PSP and PS Vita are and stuff, but it was just telling that it was just like, that streak of white and red and sort of the size of it and what it looked like. I could see a glint in his eye that it was like a bit like, I think I think he's going to be playing retro games on that over the next few months at some point, or asking me to at least, and I'll be like, yeah, you know what, it feels sturdy enough, and I think that it's user friendly enough, even for a 6-year-old turning 7
simple enough.
Yeah, do you know what I mean, to have a go in it. So I think it's good for that to be around as well in the house and stuff. So probably won't let him play on Duke Nukem too much.
No, that's fair enough.
Maybe I will.
But as much as anything, for me, it's things like the Commodore 64 cartridges. I mean, we haven't even touched on that.
Yeah.
And I got one of those on a punt for 15 quid, thinking, oh, you know what, I've never really tried anything like that. But I know, saying Retro Gamer, I know they've mentioned a couple of those games, so I'll pick that up. 15 quid, we'll try. And then I end up going and buying the other two, because I had a really good time with it. I was like, I want to see what else it can do. And so for things like that, and exposing you to these kind of new old experiences, I think it's great.
Yeah, awesome. Right, well, thank you very much for answering all my questions on it.
It's all right.
Super appreciated. I am going to go back to my holiday.
Back in the present.
Do that thing where I'm just walking down the steps behind a table. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Question mark, bye. Bye, everyone.